All right, so today the topic is going to be about how to master the astral body. And my intention for this video is to help people realize their freedom, for people to be able to somatically know the difference between a heart's desire and an astral appetite, right? There's a lot of confusion in spiritual teachings, or seeming or apparent conflict between teachings that say, just observe desires and let them fizzle out, versus no, your desire is God's desire and that is a divine desire. And so I'm gonna kind of explain the difference between, those two teachings don't conflict each other actually, because there's two different kinds of desires. So a human appetite, right, in many traditions and cultures and philosophies that try to explain this, right, this problem, this quagmire that we, the spiritual aspirant, need to address is, okay, we need to master our desires. But what they're talking about is appetites, right? Appetites that we basically are chasing a feeling. So when people say, well, it's what you really want is the essence of that thing, the truth is that what you really, really want is to know what you are. It's not even the essence of that thing. It's to know that you are the universe and that the essence of all things is within you. And the essence of all things can be focused by you right now. So when we move from an assumption of separation from God, right? I'm separate from God. And so I need to fill that void within myself, outside of me. I will seek the essence of what I want outside of me. That leads to a lot of suffering because, as many of us have already figured out, right, happiness is never attained in the world, so to speak. Happiness and joy is realized within us and it moves through us into the world, radiates into the world. So the way to master this astral body, the astral body is a subtle body that is made of fantasies, fears, desires, right? And desires that stem from an assumption, from a belief in lack or separation from God. And I will say that in higher astral realms, right, there are ascended masters and beings who are still in the astral world, in the higher astral world, that still have an astral form. But when religions and philosophies talk about mastering the astral body, if you think about levels of energy like emotion, right, anything less than peace and clarity and presence, right, any appetites that move from levels of energy underneath clarity, calm, and presence are those appetites that we want to master. So how do we do that, right? Well, if we're moving from these lower energies, right, these lower levels of energy, then that means we're not moving from a baseline of wholeness, right? So we believe we're separate from God, so we identify with an emotion like maybe chaos, maybe adrenaline, maybe excitement, but it's like a lower excitement. It's like just an excitement that will give me some stimulation right now because I feel actually very anxious, right? It's stemming from a level of anxiety, of fear. And so we go into movement from that place where the astral body wants to move us from that level of energy. So in order to master these appetites, right, these human appetites that ultimately get us into trouble, ultimately drain our physical vitality, ultimately, attract unfortunate circumstances and all kinds of unwanted things into our lives and force us to learn in kind of an archaic, unnecessary way, which is by suffering. We have to, of course, the antidote to all of this is to feel whole, right? But not just to know I am whole, not just to meditate on the idea of perfection. That could work in a very potent way for a lot of people, to meditate upon the I am presence, to meditate upon the assumption that myself and all life is perfect, right? Jesus said, what is gazed upon is brought forth. What is gazed upon is brought forth, right? If I look upon someone not as necessarily the level of energy they're showing up as right now, but as the perfection of God, then I help draw that out, right? In fact, I mentioned a story of mine that I sat in a chair 5 or 6 years ago now in an Abraham Hicks seminar. What they essentially told me about a person who I was in a partnership with was, your inner being knows who this man is. If you can tune that high and basically see him as he truly is, imagine how many people you could help. Because this being, in a relative sense, was showing up in a very deceptive, destructive, unfortunate way, right? So I created this experience in my life to master this concept, of being able to see the perfection of all life. But see, the problem is that if you only meditate upon the concept, right? Many people in this day and age, and this is not necessarily everybody. That's why, a lot of philosophies will say, well, depending on your constitution, I recommend karma yoga or this kind of yoga or this kind of yoga or whatever, inquiry, because people have different constitutions, right? So if you have been disconnected from feeling, right, you are disconnected from feeling and you tend to stay up here, whether it's in your head, whether it's in fantasy, maybe you've been meditating upon these spiritual ideas for a while, but you're not realizing them in a somatic way, in a real way in your life. Here's what I will recommend to you. And here's how to really master this astral body, so that that astral body. So if you think about the astral body, like in terms of when your mind wanders, the Course in Miracles has a great line. It says, you are far too tolerant of mind wandering. And I completely agree, because that's literally your astral body flitting around, going here. In the astral world, as soon as you think something, you're there, right? But the problem is, if part of you is like whirling around the universe, right, and the rest of you, is here, all of your energy is not all in one place. And that is very draining. And it's good that it is draining, because the universe is trying to teach us, right, to come back into presence. So the antidote to this, the way to master the astral body, is to meditate upon wholeness, but in a very somatic way, right? So if you close your eyes and if you imagine your entire body being white light, right? You radiating this white light, every cell of your body is radiating white light. The interstitial fluid of your body is radiating white light, right? You feel yourself as this light. You're consciously aware of yourself as light, and using visualization, right? And feeling your heart and feeling, right, the qualities of the self, the qualities of awareness and love and sovereignty and freedom, right? All of those things at once. If you literally walk as this light being, sit as this light being, meditate as this light being, interact as this light being, you're consciously aware, you're sensing yourself as a light being connected to the universe and connected to all life, then you will be operating from a felt sense of wholeness, and therefore your decisions will be so much more simple and so much more clear. And the thing about observation that, like I've explained many times, is when you find the dimension of observation, the observer, right? Some people say that's the soul. In my experience, the soul has many more qualities other than observation, but the observer, the part of you that can observe thought, right? You can observe thought, and from a place of that silence, right? Not only the observer, but meditating in silence, there will be some contrast between that desire body, that astral body and its activities, right? You'll begin to sense a difference between what was once very familiar to you, your tendency to scramble around and, soothe yourself with stuff in the outer world, right? Seeking the essence of what you want outside of yourself. But what I have found in my life and what I have seen in people that I work with is that adding the feeling element just makes it so much deeper, it makes the shadows more visible, right? It makes the deeply unconscious things conscious, because of observation, right? If I'm just observing my behavior from an observer's perspective, parts of my mind are vibrating in levels of energy, and those levels of energy are so familiar to me that I can't even observe them, because on some level I assume that that's normal, right? A lot of people live in guilt and they assume that it's normal. A lot of people even live in deep misery and they think that it's normal, right? So what happens is that when you meditate in a feeling way upon yourself as this white light or gold light or whatever light occurs to you intuitively, and you feel the qualities of wholeness and love and freedom, right? You literally walk as the mystic, you walk as the light being, you walk as the love, as the incarnation of love, right? You walk as this, you let it penetrate your physical form. Not only do your decisions become clear, but your body becomes more like light, right? These are, the teachings in many traditions about the rainbow body and about the light body ascending into the body of light, like Jesus did, right? He perfected the body, meaning he perfected the mind, because he could observe himself and others, no matter how they were showing up, as perfect beings of light. And so the most important is that you perceive yourself as that, right? And also keep in mind, like I've mentioned many times, it doesn't cancel out your ability to discern, right? You can still discern levels of energy, and I've gone into that in other videos and other talks. But to really, it's most important that you, because you are the source of your life. And so if you are radiating yourself from an assumption of wholeness, and that's what you're radiating out into the world, you're radiating out the knowledge that you are creator, the knowledge that you are freedom, that you are free will itself. A lot of people say, well, I don't think we have free will. But who's asking that question? That's the separate self asking that question, right? Because we are divine will. We are God. We are that. But see, there is a difference, however, between the way that God is joyously manifesting, right, wanting to express, and the momentum of the astral body, which is still God. But there is a difference, right? The ego has problems like reconciling seeming paradoxes, or things that feel opposed to each other, but they're not, right? You just have to be able to hold seemingly opposite truths, which is that everything is perfect and divine, and there are levels of energy, and there is a difference between the astral appetites. And really, when you begin to meditate in a somatic way on freedom and joy and love and sovereignty and light, you'll just begin to notice that anything that your astral body does to try to go and seek the essence of what it wants outside of you, it will feel stressful and draining, because wholeness feels enlivening, empowering, rejuvenative. Like you get filled up, and you radiate, right? Anything else, any activities that stem from lack or an inability to feel a negative emotion, they drain your energy, they drain your life force. So meditating in a somatic way on wholeness, right? Using the image of light. People are like, well, that's so new age, and I'm a big fan of the New Age. I'm a big fan of not only Eastern traditions, but Western mystics. I'm a big fan of the Alpha and the Omega, the masculine ways of enlightenment, the feminine ways of enlightenment. I'm a big fan of not only the fact that we are the unborn, but we're also the creative principle. So, there's these Eastern teachings that say we should get sucked back into the source, right? That's the ultimate goal of life. I would ask you to ask yourself, your heart, is that true? Is that true that that's the ultimate goal of life? Or was that just the Eastern perspective? That was the Eastern mystics' perspective. The Western mystics' perspective is that the imagination is also God and is creative, right? And so for me, in my life, those two things come together. And part of it is like reconciling, well, okay, I'm taking in the parts of the Eastern teachings that resonate with me, and part of what they suggest, part of what many of them suggest, is to overcome, right, lust and greed, and basically overcome that astral desire body that's moving from a place of lack. That's very good advice. It's very good advice. But I'm also clarifying within myself, what is the definition of desire? When they say, oh, just observe desire and just like don't give it any life, it's like, well, that's the desire. The desires that I don't want to give life are the desires that stem from an assumption of lack. The desires that stem from the knowledge of wholeness, that's God's pleasure to express those things, right? That's the infinite intelligence. Its joy is to express our heart's desire. Our heart's desire is God's joy. And so my intention with this video is helping you clarify all these things, reconciling all these teachings, putting it together, and trusting, you know, that your desires are divine, right? And let me just tell you, like, anybody in a body has desire because they're in a body. They desire to be here. They desire to be manifested. You know, Ramana Maharshi, at the end of his life, he didn't desire to have any more experience or to exist. But that's also a desire, right? So he desired to go back into basically kind of like a state of awareness and deep sleep. But I would ask you to, again, ask your soul, is that the ultimate goal of spirituality? Is that the final destination of the soul? I say no. And I say there's lots of God-realized beings that keep a form, that keep a physical form, that keep an astral form, that dedicate their life to service, that create their own universes. So point is, right, there's a difference between heart's desire and astral appetites. And the way to know the difference is to practice, to make it your greatest intention to somatically meditate upon the I am presence, right? Maybe in a very vivid way. Like walk around when you walk your dog or when you go on your stroll today, like feel yourself as light emanating and radiating yourself into the world. Not just observing the world, not just the observer is only one dimension of yourself, right? There's observing and there's feeling, and something is only real to you when you feel it, right? Otherwise, you're separated from a dimension of yourself, which is feeling. So that's why feeling is so important, and visualization, and trust your intuition. Like however your intuition suggests to you to meditate upon wholeness in a very emphatic way when you interact with other people, like bring in, focus yourself into wholeness, right? Feel it from the heart, feel it radiating from the heart. You are the sun, you are the life-giving sun. And so you focus there into your heart chakra, and you radiate your love into the world, right? And use the golden light, or use the white light, or the violet flame, or whatever occurs to your intuition to enhance this in your awareness so that it becomes your reality. Right? And before you know it, you just are that. You just are that. And so you don't have to really focus it anymore, because really that's how you become the ascended master. You stop dividing yourself from your divinity. You stop limiting yourself, right? And so in order to really become the master, right, not just the philosopher, but the master, you must walk as these things, right? And therefore you must feel them. So that's my message for today. Have a beautiful day.